We're hanging out. We're hanging out. Yeah. And I have a myriad of things to do, but really today is just going to be a day of throwing. So I'm going to do some throwing. I'm hoping to advance the whole plate issue. I've watched a couple of videos, and I'm hoping that I've figured some things out as far as making a form that will help me throw plates and throwing with a larger amount of clay. I also want to finish a couple of planners that I started, so it's just gonna kind of be a day of throwing. You and me, babe. You and me, babe. It's just nothing else like you. So both of these were 2.5 pounds of clay. This one was less than that because I took off this big ol' hunk while trying to center it. So, but I threw those 2 little tiny plates the other day, and hoping to make these in 2 parts and get some practice on some successful plates in the process. And yeah, I think they're going to make great planters. The other planters that I made, shrinkage rate. With the shrinkage rate, they're tiny. They're succulent planters. They're not actual planters. So I'm excited. I think these will be great. This got really wonky. That one got even wonkier. So still struggling with 2.5 pounds. But these are much more promising than anything else that I've ever done in 2.5 pounds. So, and they both have no bottom in them because they're going on this plate. So, good stuff. I just got 4. Okay, that one there is an exception, but he was the very first one that I did. But oh my gosh, I really am kind of this is kind of unbelievable to me, because if you had told me I could come out here and do this today, I would have laughed in your face. So, I want to share what I think is making a difference here. So these are all 2.5 pounds of clay. Since I had success with that third one, kind of, I decided I would just keep going with 2.5 pounds of clay. And these 2. So this one over here that's behind the plaster right there, and this one that's still in the wheel. It's just, yeah, good stuff going on here. So some of the things that I think are really helping, that I got tips from other potters in other YouTube videos. One is, and I didn't even realize that I was doing it, but when I'm coming up, I shrug my shoulders like that. You've probably seen it. I do this. So, and when I stand up, I do the same thing. And you see people doing it all the time, but it never really internalized for me until somebody said, you gotta put your elbow in, up, like this, and pull up this way. Pull up this way. Because this is a lot more, whether you're standing or whether you're sitting, this can go a lot higher than this. So that's kind of a no-brainer, but that has helped a lot. My shoulder is kind of going, what are you doing? What are you doing to me? But not in a pain sort of way, more in a, you don't use those muscles. You don't use those muscles. So yeah, there's that. Let's see. The other thing is, oh my gosh, the centering process has been going a lot better. And what the other thing he said was, if you have, he gave the example of a storefront, and they had, you know, those mats out in front of the store that keep you from slipping if you're coming in from a rain-soaked day, right? And he said, so this particular store was having a problem because those would just not last. They couldn't find one that would last. Well, it was a high-end store, and at the time, stiletto heels were all the rage. And he said, you get a slip of a woman, 100-pound woman, walking on and off of those mats in stiletto heels, it'll just poke right through the mat. But if they're walking in regular shoes, then the mat, there's, you know, it's not going to do any damage at all. He said that the thing to take away from that is that the smaller the contact point, stiletto heel, the more force you get out of that point with the same amount of weight. So a 100-pound woman in a stiletto heel with a point of contact that is this big can do a lot more damage than a 300-pound person in a heel that's even just, you know, twice as big or 3 times as big. So if we want to direct the maximum force onto the piece of clay, whether centering it or otherwise, we use the smallest point of contact that we can use, which is our fingertips. So when centering, wrap, this is my dominant hand fingers around, curl them like this, and then use this hand to push those fingertips into the clay like a rib. Now, you're not going to use a rib because you can't feel the clay, and the clay won't slip through a rib when centering. But push this way, you're going to save your wrists because you're not bending your wrists out. And if that's the only point on the clay, and you keep your hands, you push it in to a certain point, and you keep your hands still, then all your problems are just going to go right up into the top. The top's easy to center. And that is so true. Then you push it back down. You do it again. Then you push it down. So, and then the opposite is also true when when you've got to control it with your non-dominant hand that's pushing in this way. Just make sure that you have the smallest contact point possible that's actually doing the work. You know, the rest of this hand is going to slip around on the piece, but what's actually doing the work is really small when you're centering large pieces of clay. Now, wedging large pieces of clay without getting tricep cramps is a whole other ball of wax. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But those things really helped. Really helped a lot. And look at that. I mean, oh my gosh. You can't really see this one. Let me help here. Whoa! Look at that. Huge. It's huge. I mean, this is actually a legitimate planter. This is a legitimate planter. I mean, you could actually put a plant in that. I mean, it's going to shrink. I know. But it will still be a medium-sized planter. It has no floor, which is another reason I could get it so big with only 2.5 pounds of clay. But, oh, that was another thing. One other guy said, if your clay is getting out of control, you need to immediately stop and compress. If the clay is getting out of control, it is a compression issue. And so I feel sure you saw in the time lapse me using 2 ribs, compressing the clay, you know, trying to keep it from getting overworked. And none of these are overworked except for that one. So 3 out of 4 that aren't actually overworked. That's huge for me anyway. So, good stuff. I'm going to throw a couple of plates for these guys. Little tiny ones. Little 8-inch plates. And that'll probably do it for today. Herbert's very, very encouraged by what we did today. You're doing a great job, Herbert. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. The next time you see these planters, we will be attaching the planter tops here to the planter bottoms. But man, it's been a really long time since I wedged up 6 pieces of clay, and I actually got 6 pieces of completed pottery out of those 6 pieces of clay. So super pumped about that. As I squirt slip all over my body here. But yeah, these need to dry a little bit, and then we'll poke the drain holes in the pots and put them on their little platters so that they will be cute little planters. Hopefully not so little. But yeah, thanks for coming out.